Says it's going live. We're live. Hello, everybody. Wave to the camera, Nick. It's way up in the corner here.
Got like two different.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first Tech Talk of the fall quarter. And if you haven't met Melanie yet, say hello to Melanie Coyen, our new instructional designer.
Hello.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is the first time we've tried doing this from the Kettle seminar room at SFCC because we have this nice camera and microphone, but we're still trying to figure out the best way to do it because it's way up in the ceiling here, so it looks way down on us.
We'll figure it out.
It's all good.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about early intervention using some tools that Canvas has. I'm gonna turn this off. This one because I don't like seeing the side of my face like that. Okay, we were going to talk about some early intervention tools in Canvas, and then also what do you do with that information once you have it. So I think we were going to start with some Canvas stuff first, and Nick, you already have that up on the.
Yeah, we'll go get that going, but essentially what we've got going is we're going to take a look at some of the analytics within Canvas that can hopefully tell us essentially who we need to reach out to. We can use some data to kind of figure out exactly how those approaches should be taken. And this is all using information that you as instructors have right now, day one, once the class starts. So I think Melanie was going to start by taking us into the People's tab. We'll go there, and then New Analytics actually has some new options that we'll take a look at that might help even push us over the edge of do we reach out, do we not, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and start by taking us into the People's tab. So really the goal here is that we want to support students early on. And so one of the ways that we can do that is by learning a little bit about how they're interacting with the course. And so just a quick, simple first step is by going into the People's tab. And then all the way over here on the right side, we've got these two columns, this last activity and total activity. And so these are useful. The last activity tells us when they were last in your course. And then total activity logs the amount of time that they spend in your course. And so while these are useful, I do want to point out that there's some caveats here. So total activity is logging how long they're in your course. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's how long they're working on course material. It's not necessarily time on task. So if you see total activity that's very high, it could just mean that they have your browser open and they've gone off to do something else and it's still logging time.
Right. So like if I'm a student and I log into the class and then I walk away from my computer to go make a sandwich, Canvas still counts that as time. If I do that and then come back and click something else, then it will track that whole amount of time. So it can give you false positives on amount of time in course. It can also give us false negatives, right? I think we talked to Jerry about this, that it doesn't always log time if you are on certain mobile devices. Is that right?
Yeah, and Melanie and I were working through that with faculty last week. Certain times it might be fun, certain times it's not. Sometimes it doesn't do, say, certain videos, like if you're watching a video passively, not clicking on anything, sometimes that gets lost. And if you've got a lot of videos in your course, that could be an element. I was looking into that. So there's a lot of caveats to it. It's more of an estimate, right? It's a rough idea. Is that appropriate way to say it?
And also if you have external links in your course or downloadable material, it may underestimate how long students are working on activities for your course if they're off in an external website or if they're reading downloaded material offline. So yeah, so this is not perfect information, but I think it's a really nice initial starting point. And so when you see these numbers being really high, it doesn't necessarily again mean that students are working that long, but when you see them really low, it might be a nice opportunity to notice that as a little bit of a red flag and perhaps reach out to a student to make sure that they're getting used to logging into your class every day and that they're comfortable using Canvas.
And the last activity column is fairly accurate of the last time the student logged in. So if that column is blank for a student, it means they have never accessed that course in Canvas. So even on the first week, second week in class, you should be checking those two columns there, and if the student has never accessed the course in Canvas, that's probably a very good red flag that you need to connect that student sooner rather than later, so that we don't let them fall through the cracks.
And should we take a look at access reports?
Yeah, if you want to jump into that.
Just, one quick other point is to help sort of clarify what we're seeing here with total activity. So if you see something that looks low or related, you can click into user details and look at an access report, which will tell you exactly how many times and which pages they've viewed.
I guess I probably should we should preface all of this. This is just our backup course. So
Oh, yeah.
what somebody's navigating in here, it's not an actual class. The content in here, right, would be atypical. It's just videos, maybe they're looking for a resource. So that's why we use this one, since it does have logged information, but the information is essentially in any way indicating student success or not, because it's just our backup course. So if you see your name in there, we're not calling you out. Literally, it's just our backup course.
Yeah, and I just
Sorry.
simply wanted to point out that this access report provides a little bit of extra information or backup to what you're seeing in those first two columns on the people tab.
So like in a normal student situation, probably the first thing we would see is course home would be the most viewed page, because that's what they go to every time they join a class. We would hope that we would see evidence that they have looked at the syllabus at some point. Any course intro material you have in an introduction module, hopefully they've been clicking on that. Hopefully, if you have some kind of first week or second week assignment, you'll see that they've been looking at that. And if they haven't been doing those things, then again, that might be a sign that you might want to reach out to those students and ask them, hey, how's everything going? Do you have any questions about the course? Just want to remind you that we have this assignment coming up. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help, something like that, right?
And then maybe something just to kind of further back it up. We've got this element in new analytics that just got updated. So if I jump over, you should see this.
I think if you just go to the course homepage.
Yeah, I think this link might not always be there, but you will have this new analytics button on the right-hand side of your home page. When you click on it, this is kind of a further report of your course. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, but since we're just talking about trying to find students that we might need to intervene, job to, kind of create a personal connection, I want to point us over to online attendance. It's very similar to People's tab that Melanie just showed us.
This is like a brand new tool that just became available like last month, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of been sitting in here. So what I'll say once again, preface this all with, it's just a fact dev course. These do not in any way correlate with student success in this fashion. You know, we're not expecting people to be in here this week, but what it does tell us is about every 24 hours it'll update, and it'll give you at least some indication of how many times somebody might have accessed your course during the week, so you can kind of get a metric. So instead of just the last access date, you can see when they're accessing your course. Wonder if I can find. Caleb, where are you?
Might not be on the list, so
It might, yeah, not come up with good old Caleb,
you
but
can probably just scroll down to find somebody that's been there recently.
yeah, we should find a green. Oh, boy.
I saw a green there.
Criterion that, I'm gonna search by criterion that and just see if anybody has accessed this. So you can see when you've got a course of, 700 or so students, it's a little thing.
This will be much more obvious if you're in one of your own courses, so.
Especially when most of the students will have accessed it at some point.
I saw one there, so
Go off first.
Range too, which might.
Oh, I'm trying to think of when they might access it. So the filters ended up being a little bit of a thorn in my side just now, but. Oh, did I just change the date range?
I think you might have changed. Oh, there we go.
Jerry.
Perfect, thank you, Jerry.
Shining star, Jerry. So this is an example of somebody has accessed the course on these days, so they are touch points. So if I send, say, an announcement on one day, I'm not seeing them access, their course during those times, could be an indication that that's super engaged, or maybe they do everything through email, so they might be losing stuff that's in the Canvas course that's not getting sent to their email. So there's a ton of different stuff we can kind of at least try to figure out here that helpful.
This gets a really nice visual sense of where students are at.
And Jennifer Barson says she does not have a new analytics tab in one or in her courses. If you're not seeing it, it should be on by default, but sometimes things just don't quite update right in Canvas. If you go to settings, I believe it's under, is it feature options?
Feature options.
Should have the option for new analytics if it isn't already turned on by default. But Jennifer, if you want to send us those links, we can essentially figure out what might be going on in your specific course, since it should be default.
Supposed to be turned on for all courses now, but if there's a course that isn't, yeah, we'll look at it.
I don't think it would.
No, it would be under feature options. We'll look at that course for January. Let us know which one it is. Oh, she was, never mind. She found it in settings. It was not sent to people.
Oh,
She got it.
interesting.
Okay. So that was just a super quick look at some analytic tools that you have easy access to in Canvas. So then the question is, well, if I've been looking in there and I see a student that hasn't logged in a week, or maybe hasn't logged in at all, is not consistently checking in during the class, maybe has missed the first assignment, what should we do with that information as an instructor? So I think the first thing you should do right away is message that student in Canvas, using the Canvas inbox tool, right? Just because that's the easiest thing to do, you have immediate access to it. But it's kind of a chicken and the egg situation where if the student has been logging into Canvas, they may not get messages in Canvas. So what's the next step if you can't get a hold of them via Canvas? And Melanie, I think you were the one, you were talking about this when you taught classes. What was your next step there?
I would go into CTC link and look for their email addresses. Have different email address to send a message to.
Because they should have a directory or whatever their preferred email address. So Veronica's gonna hand that. Yeah, Veronica.
Can she repeat that? We didn't hear anything she said. I'm sorry. I didn't. I don't know if anybody else did, but.
Sorry, can you hear me okay now?
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, so if I didn't get a response in Canvas, then I could go into CTC link and get an email address from there,
From your class roster.
from the class roster, yeah. And send an email that way.
That would definitely be the second step. But another thing that we know about those student emails is they don't always check those emails for lots of different reasons. Sometimes when a student registers for classes, they might put their parents' email address in there, or they might make up an email, or they might create a quick Gmail or Hotmail account just because someone was required of it, right? But a lot of Gen Z students do not get in the habit of checking email regularly. So you should definitely do that as your step 2. But we know for a fact that many students will not check those emails if they have access to that email account at all, which is not always a guarantee. So then what's the third step? If you can't get a hold of them in Canvas, and if they don't respond to the email from the class roster, then the next thing you should do is use the early alert system. Joanne says, call them. Joanne, how often do you do that? Just try to cold call students?
Regularly. And
Regularly?
it surprises me how often they pick up and I say, this is Joanne from counseling. Do you have a second? They say, sure. And we're able to resolve the thing in like 2 minutes.
Great.
So much quicker.
Do instructors usually have access to student phone numbers and directory information? I'm not sure about that. Counselors do.
I feel like you have a general information tab in, well, if you were in the advising homepage, so maybe not.
Yeah.
It would
I-
depend on what kind of activities you're in.
Do most
Yeah.
instructors have access to CTC link though?
Instructors have access to their class roster and CTC link, but I don't know which columns instructors have access to. Counselors see more things than instructors do.
Fair point, fair point.
Yeah, but that's why we would suggest using the early alert system. So both campuses, SCC and SFCC, they have different systems, and we'll get into that briefly in a second. But they have forums where you can go to and you can say, my student in this class I have a concern about them, I'd like to submit an alert. And then it'll have some kind of either a box where you type in your concern, or it might have a drop-down menu of possible kinds of concerns. And you will say, this student has not been logging into Canvas, they've missed the first assignment, it's week 2 and I haven't heard from them, and I'm worried that they're falling behind or they're at risk of failure, right? What happens then is that early alert will go to the early alert team on your campus, and it's a group of people, and each alert will be distributed to a different team member, and then their job as the early alert team member is to contact that student basically by any means possible, right? So they have access to all of the directory information you have for that student, whether it's email addresses, alternative email addresses, phone numbers, they can try text messaging them, and they will do whatever they can to get in contact with that student, and they'll say, well, Angela, you're on one of the early alert teams, so would you mind sharing, what do you say, what do you do when you get one of those alerts?
So we try to make sure that we are not sharing any specific information about particular classes until we have a chance to like actually say hello. So I always start, especially if the student doesn't pick up or I'm sending an email out because so many people don't have their voicemails set up, that type of thing. That just simply says, I want to connect you to some resources. And I try to save the details about classes and things like that, never putting it in your instructor thinks you need help or there's a problem in a class, but rather how can we help you achieve your goals? If they get back to us, we make sure that they get connected with the right resource. So if they're struggling academically, maybe it's a tutoring thing, maybe it's an academic advising session, maybe it's just encouragement to reach out to the faculty, which is always the first thing that I suggest as a faculty member myself. But if it's about, especially sort of more of a holistic student support issue, there's people on the team then that can help with everything from housing to our food and resources pantry to financial aid to registration issues. And so we really try to kind of attack this from a huge team kind of place. But I will say this also, if your students aren't responding to you, there is no guarantee that the early alert team will have any more luck. So we have a policy, at least at SCC, to not harass students. We reach out, we give them time to come back. We try to call them first thing. We email them or text them through Maxient if we can't. And we give them a chance to get back to us. If they don't, we'll follow up again. We'll give them a little chance to make that happen. We don't want to, we can't drag people right to resources. So we just need to offer that. So if you don't hear back for a while, it's probably because the team hasn't heard back and we really do our best. But we also recognize that we can't help people who are not interested in getting back to us. So sometimes that fresh number is all that it takes for somebody to respond and get back to us really quickly. And it's just sort of we're all doing this, trying our best. So I hope that you all will be kind and patient to your early alert team who can have sometimes many, many referrals. I found the numbers for SCC's campus for the last academic year, 909 referrals were submitted. I think that's higher than SFCC as I understand it. We have a pretty robust referring system here. So it makes a difference. And sometimes we have such great successes, including counseling students to withdraw or try again another quarter. Sometimes those sad stories are the best move for the students. So we really try to focus on their best interest.
Thank you, Angela. Well, and that's an extremely good point, is that sometimes the answer for that student is they need to pause and they need to try again next time. So that's one of the reasons it's so important to do this early, is there are deadlines built into our academic calendar, right? There's a deadline for full refund of their tuition and a different deadline for 50% refund of their tuition. There's a deadline for withdrawing and not getting a W on your transcript. There's another deadline for withdrawing with a W. And past that date, they can't withdraw at all, even if they wanted to. And they're guaranteed to get an F at that point, right? So there are certain time critical points during the quarter where it's really important that if a student is in that at-risk category, that we do what we can to get a hold of them and help them one way or the other. So briefly, I wanted to just show what the process looks like for both campuses. So let me share my screen over here. Okay, so I'm starting at the district page, and then I'm going to go to the two campuses. So for SCC, you go to the SCC homepage, you go to employee portal, and you go to early alert for SCC. And you click on that, and then you fill out the form. It asks for your information, and then it asks for the student's information. It'll ask for some kind of little narrative about what is it that you're concerned about. You can check off different areas of concern that might be an issue, provide more detail. Have you tried contacting the student already? If yes, did they respond to you or not? So do your best to fill this out, give as much detail as you think is appropriate, and then submit your report. For SCC, that's all you do, early alert. For SFCC, there's a different form that they just rolled out this quarter. And if you're on the SFCC mailing list, you probably got an email earlier this week from Cynthia with more detail about this. So I would encourage you to go read that if you haven't already. But if you go to SFCC page, employee portal, and behavior intervention team, I believe is the new link. Let me double check. Oh, it's down lower, sorry. It's the student conduct care and behavior report. That's where we're going. Student conduct care and behavior report, new. And from this one, it wants me to connect. Let's see if it lets me do it without connecting. No, it doesn't. Let's see. Let me log in. But I'm not going to mess around with that too long. If you're logged into your account, it should get you onto that loading page. And from that page, I believe it actually gives you 3 different choices. One is the student care report. One is student conduct and safety concerns report. And then one is a Title IX report. And again, in Cynthia's email, she kind of gives you a little infographic saying which one is appropriate for most things. So when it comes to basic academic early alert, what you want to use is the student care report. And then that's very similar in design and also similar in purpose to the early alert from SCC. And then there's also one if it's more of a safety concern or conduct violation, or potentially a Title IX concern. There are 2 other forms for that. I think that's basically everything we wanted to make sure we hit on for this tech talk, right? Am I missing anything?
No, feeling solid, and hopefully people are feeling a little bit more comfortable what that workflow might look like.
I just want to check the chat and see if I missed anything. Interesting. Angela says students can also self-refer in the drop-down menu from the student tools box. It's nice for us to empower them to self-refer. I actually didn't know that. That's cool. So that might even be something that you might want to include in your course syllabus or your welcome message, is that this is available as a proactive tool that you can use as a student if you feel that you need help, whether it's academic help, financial aid questions, maybe even like housing and security type questions. They may be able to refer you to some resources that would be able to help you out in your situation.
And it's so great for us to sometimes get out of the way for students connecting to resources. We don't have to be the people who are the gatekeepers. We give them the links and let them access resources as needed. They don't need to come to us unless they really want to or want help. So I really feel like that's an important part of giving them the tools to figure out what resources they need.
Great. I'm curious if anybody has any specific experiences using an early alert form where you did have kind of a success story coming out of it, a student that this actually helped them pull back from potentially falling through the cracks. Maybe that's not something that you would be comfortable sharing, that's fine.
I'll share one.
Oh, please.
So as a counselor, sometimes the early alerts get routed to, to us, and then we contact the student. So I had a student that wrote something disturbing on her paper. I call her, she goes, yeah, I know, I got to stop doing that. Yeah, I know. And apparently this is a thing that she has done. And so if you were her instructor, you might say to yourself, she's done this before, I've submitted this report before, why bother submitting it again? But this time on the phone, I got her to accept mental health services with our interns. I don't know if she followed through, but she said yes for the first time ever. So I think just that consistency was helpful for that particular student.
Well, I think that's a good point, that it's probably this value in providing a record over time of these things. So it's not just one data point, it's a narrative of things that have happened over time, whether it's getting better or worse, more concerning, less concerning, so there's a lot of value in that. That's great, Joanne, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, we're out of time, it's already 1:30. That went by fast.
These always seem to.
If there's any other questions or comments, we're happy to hang out, but if you have other things going on in your life, I know Angela does, I need to head back over to the other campus pretty soon to attend another session. Otherwise, we will see you all next week. What's our topic next week?
I have to check.
Is it?
It's fall quarter, nobody can remember.
New quizzes next week.
Thank
Will
you,
be-
Melanie.
I don't know, it might be. We'll find out.
Figure it out.
Thanks for looking it up.
Stay tuned.
It's loaded up, it's loaded up.
Oh, we're so close. And it is new.
Yeah,
quizzes.
next week's new quizzes, that should be an interesting one. If you are not already familiar, Canvas has been working on making a new and updated version of their quizzing tool. It is more accessible, more mobile friendly, and has some cool new question types and new moderation tools. It has been under development for actually a couple of years, and we have held off on talking about it because we didn't feel like it was quite ready for prime time yet. They were still developing some of the tools and some of the compatibilities, but they have made great strides over the summer, so we wanted to start talking about it now. Just so it doesn't cause any panic, we're not forcing anybody to switch to new quizzes. Canvas still has at least 2 years before they officially flip the switch. This is more of an opt-in experiment that you can play with, and it is continuing to be developed. This will not be the first time we talk about, or this won't be the last time we talk about new quizzes, just the first time. We'll probably keep coming back to it over the next year or so as they continue updating the tool and getting ready to migrate things over. So make sure you don't miss that one. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Good having you all.